Welcome to day 3 of the Small Firm Symposium, hosted by AI New York State, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. Today's session is from Unnoticed to Unforgettable, Mastering News-Driven Strategies for Your Firm's Visibility with Kelly Donahue and Katie Alessi. The program will run until 1 p.m. with time for questions and answers. Before we begin, please put your name on your Zoom profile to help staff with attendance. Mute your microphone and turn off your video. You are encouraged to use the chat box feature at the bottom of your screen to post comments and submit questions. This program has been approved for 1.5 LUs. You are required to attend the entire program to receive these credits. Zoom and staff will track your attendance. In addition to tracking your attendance, you will see 4 continuing education words at various times throughout the program. The speaker will announce these words as they appear on the screen, and they will also be posted by me in the chat box. Please write down these 4 words as you see or hear them, because you'll be required to record them on your CE evaluation after the program. The evaluation link will be posted in the chat box at the conclusion of the program and emailed to you afterwards. You must complete and return this evaluation by tomorrow, Wednesday, April 17th, noon Eastern Time. Again, please open your chat box to see the CE words throughout the program and the evaluation link at the end. Here are today's disclaimers. They were also emailed to you previously in your Know Before You Go. Here are today's learning objectives. And now it's my pleasure to turn the program over to Katie and Kelly. Thank you.
Thanks, Cassidy. All right, let me just share my screen. We will jump right in. See my kiddos up first, but that will change. All right, Kelly, you see the screen?
I do.
Okay. All right, beautiful. Well, thank you all for your patience. Technology is truly not our strong suit sometimes, and it failed us for a few moments, but we are here and super excited to be with you all today to share and move the curtain to show you a glimpse behind what we do with our clients day in and day out. And that is to raise visibility for our clients by develop really strategic news-driven strategies. So the biggest common challenge that we hear with our clients day in and day out is that they're unnoticed in the media landscape. And so we are here to encourage you all to go from unnoticed to unforgettable and to create your own news. So let's walk through that today. But before we jump in, we're going to do quick introductions since we soaked up about 10 minutes just with technology issues. My name is Katie Alessi. Kelly Donahue is my fierce business partner, and we own Trifecta Collaborative, which is a small but mighty marketing and communications agency solely focused on living and breathing and supporting architects, engineers, and construction management firms, and helping them think of really creative and strategic ways to increase the visibility of their firm with their key target audiences. So Kelly and I met many, many moons ago, not that many, but at a larger architectural firm where we both ran side by side on the marketing and communications team, running large strategic campaigns on a national and international scale to raise visibility for our clients. And about 3 years ago, Trifecta was born, where we made the decision to take our national expertise and bring it back to the small to mid-sized architectural firms. I am the marketing part of Trifecta. I love working with our clients day in and day out to really understand their marketing goals and then help develop that path to get them there. Kelly, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for taking some time with us today. I'm Kelly Donahue, and I'm the communication side of the Trifecta partnership. And we are as Katie said, a dynamic duo that really helps our clients look for all kinds of ways to turn up the volume around the great work that you're doing. You have your head down, you're working hard on the various projects and collaborations that you have going in your practice. And often you look up and you say, wow, I've been doing a lot of work, but people aren't aware of all the work that I'm doing or all the good ideas or new ideas that we've created. So that's what we're going to talk about today, and we're excited to get started.
Thanks, Kelly. All right, so we have a jam-packed agenda. Like Cassidy mentioned, we have about an hour of presentation. We'll try to shave off a few minutes due to our technology issue before, but we will definitely leave time for Q&A. So as we go through today's presentation, please use the chat function to populate your questions. And I promise you, we will get through as many questions as possible towards the end of the presentation. But to start things off, we are going to do a little bit of a survey to get to know you better. And then Kelly is going to dive into and set the stage of the current media landscape and how it's shifted over the years. And then we will talk about how you can go about creating and sharing your own news stories, utilizing your website and other marketing channels. We'll talk about types of compelling content to create. And then my favorite, I can't help but to be a numbers girl, but at the end of the day, it all comes back to return on investment. You are a small architectural firm. Your bandwidth is limited when it comes to marketing activities. So any type of marketing activity we suggest for you and for our clients, we want to make sure that we can measure the results. So as you know, a marketing strategy can be very complex for a firm, regardless of your size. But today we are truly here to focus on how we can help you, give you the strategic steps and tips to not only create your own news, but also to share it as well. So when Kelly and I were brainstorming topics for this AIA session, we kept coming back to this Google Analytics stat. And that is specifically for professional services firms. When it comes to most visited websites, here's the top three. Homepage makes sense. About us and contact information. And then third is your news page and press and media coverage. What's really funny about that is in today's day, it's the third top visited webpage. 3 years ago, that was a different story. It was actually the 11th most visited webpage. So as you can see that there's been a dynamic shift in how people can share news, and more professional services firms and small architectural firms are sharing their own stories, utilizing a news page and self-curating their own content. Okay, so we not only want to get to know you better, so as we're presenting today, we are customizing our examples and our ideas specifically to you and your demographic, but we also want to let everyone on the presentation today get to know each other better. So we are going to do Mentimeter. I hope technology is on our side. Fingers crossed. We tested it a bunch of times. So Mentimeter, for those that don't know, is an online surveying tool where you can, in real time, receive responses from your audience. So there's two ways to access it. Oh, you guys are great. All right. Obviously, people are catching on, but how large is your firm? You can use the QR code in the left bottom corner or join through your browser at menti.com. All right, very cool. What are we up to? 26, okay. We'll just give you a couple moments to log in and respond. So the 2 to 20 range seems to be the most popular today. Oh. Someone scribbled on it. That's interesting. All right, Kelly, should I move to the next one?
Yeah, keep going. This is great. Thank you,
So
everybody.
fun. All right, so let's move on to the next question. Thank you for everyone for your involvement. What is the role at your firm? Oh, hold on. I gotta hit start Mentimeter. There we go.
Perfect.
Hey, Katie or Kelly, are there any links to this that could be placed in the chat?
To access it?
Yeah, people are someone's asking if there's a
Yep.
link.
So at the top of the top center of the screen, you'll see menti.com. If you go to your web browser on your phone and type in menti.com and then use that unique code, you'll be able to participate. All right. Due to
Thank
time, you gonna say something, Kelly?
No, keep going. This is great.
Okay. All right, so owners are leading the charge for today's presentation. That's fantastic.
You also know that everybody has a lot of roles. We're a small business too. And you could easily fall into many of these categories, but it's what your primary role is.
Great point. All right. Okay, what markets does your firm serve? Residential, higher educational, municipal, cultural. I believe you have 4 or 5 that you can fill in, and this will actually develop a word cloud. And the larger words show that multiple people also work in that sector, which is great to see.
Awesome.
Very cool. All right, healthcare, residential, commercial, hospitality is starting to come up more. That's great. A wonderful, diverse mix. Okay. And I believe we have one more. Okay. Does your firm currently have a news page on its website? Very cool. So for the ones that do, we hope that today's presentation can help you enhance what you're currently doing. And then for the ones that don't or are working on one, we hope the practical steps and ideas and tips that we share will help you continue to either convince you to develop your own news page or continue to help you enhance the one you're working on. Awesome. Thank you all. All right, Kelly, I'm going to pass it to you to set the stage of the media landscape.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And those questions are so helpful, as Katie indicated, for us to get to know you, but also for all of you to get to know each other and see that we're all in this big pool together. I love to see the industry encouraging one another, and I'm hoping that's what we're all going to get out of today's exercise. So, as Katie said, setting the stage, the big thing that we have in front of us is that, boy, oh boy, has information consumption changed. And I know you're probably all laughing looking on the left-hand side of the screen at things like a newspaper or the family crowded around a television or a radio, or how about that thing in the center? That was one of the first personal computers. That was 30 years ago that came on the screen. And while that seems like a long time, it really isn't. I think many of you probably remember doing things hand drafting or before AutoCAD presented itself, or BIM or Revit, et cetera, et cetera. And now here we are today looking at all of our digital consumption. And just to put it in perspective, the iPhone came on the scene in about 2006, 2007, and the iPad was 2010. It really hasn't been a tremendously long time that we've had technology in our hand. And now we have the advent of AI and what that means. And this is going to be a plug for the AI presentation from the AIA that you can attend this Thursday if you're not signed up already. So I encourage everyone to just realize that the landscape has changed, and the way that your architecture firm is communicating needs to change along with it. So how do we consume information today? What does that look like? In today's world, there's all kinds of things, like, you can pop to next, Katie, like new technologies, new methods of distribution, of how information is shared and consumed. And also just want to be very, very clear that high level, 8 out of 10 Americans today are saying they get most of the information, news, or updates from digital devices. These two charts that you're taking a look at on the left-hand side, I want you to pay your close attention to the part that's in deep red and then a little lighter red above it to see how many people are using digital devices, how many are turning to TV, radio, or other options. And then the chart on the right, you can see that digital device use is still continuing to rise, whereas our traditional forms of media are continuing to fall. And that's something important for us to keep in mind, especially for you as a firm, as you're looking to raise your visibility and turn up your volume around who you are and what you do. These are important numbers to keep an eye on. So as we jump into our changing industry, I think we'll skip over that one, Katie, for time purposes. As we're looking at our changing industry, when I first joined the architecture industry, which was about 30 years ago now, when I first began promoting projects and people for the firm that I was working for, we called it the big three, that you had paid ads, you had earned media, and owned media. Many of you have probably heard those terms used over and over. Paid ads are any place that you could put an advertisement for your purpose. Earned media was when you pitched a story about your company or you or an organization that you're, that you are involved with. Anytime you were putting your news out in front of a journalist or a third-party organization that was going to share information about you. And then owned media is media that you yourself create. So everyone probably remembers monographs, or when we were sending out printed newsletters, etc. I'm going to put a little star next to owned media as we move forward, because as you're thinking about these industry changes, what's happened is that with the media landscape the way it currently is, it's really hard to get a news story. When I first began, we would do a grand opening of a small project. Every TV, radio, newspaper, media outlets and journalists from near and far would make their way to cover the news. There was a lot of individuals that were out there that were really pushing and trying to get different angles on different stories. Today, with less journalists, less media outlets and publications for you to publish in, it's really much more challenging to get that earned media, and it's more confusing to figure out where to put paid media. So the owned media is a new opportunity for all of us in this industry. Just a quick example on when we talk about the fewer journalists, there's a publication Katie and I were working with that is a daily newspaper. 5 years ago, they had 30 people in their newsroom. Today, they cover the same territory, and many of them have more to do than ever before, and there's now 3. So thinking of that massive change from 30 to 3, that's not uncommon for many of the publications or outlets that we're currently working with. So as you're thinking about all of that, that creates this opportunity, and that's what we're here to talk to you about today. We see this, and we're happy to share it with all of you, that there's this changing media landscape, but it means an opportunity for you to think about and maybe change the way you're sharing news. It used to be, that getting an article in a major publication is a home run. And I don't want to tell you that it's not, because we still do earn media. It's just a little more challenging to try to get that earned media coverage. Many of the publications that used to publish monthly are now bi-monthly, and maybe the publications are a little smaller than they used to be. So you can imagine that just makes it a little bit harder. We still want that earned media and we're still working toward it. But if you can couple that with a really strong, a strong opportunity for you to create your own media, that's going to give you that balancing act that you're really looking for. You don't need the home run media piece for great exposure. You can do a lot of this promotion yourself, and there's all kinds of opportunities for you to dive in that we're going to talk about today. So content consumption has become a really important opportunity. And when you think about it, think about how you consume media and how you get your information on a daily basis. Your clients and your target audience are very much the same. So think about this opportunity as a time for you and a time for you to make a big move for your firm to become more visible. So I've said that word enough. The word of the week is opportunity. If you could use that as your CE word, that would be great for you to mark that down, because you'll need that for credit for today's presentation.
Also, everyone, I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm not sure why that red mark is on the screen. Somebody must have made it. I'm not sure who did, but whoever made it has to delete it themselves. I do not have control over that. So I apologize, everyone.
Yeah, and I don't think I did it.
Don't think so either. Okay, keep rolling.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Okay, so we're going to get into the untapped potential of news today. I began just describing a little bit of that, but we're going to begin with, like, what is news? When I was in college, and when I first got out of college, and now even today, if you were to look up the definition of news, it's really about events or activities that happen in today's world, and it's broadcast. It's on newspaper, television, even podcasts. That would be what is considered news. I'm here to tell you, as a professional that's made my entire career in public relations and working with news media, that I'm questioning that, of whether that really is the only way you get news, and if that's the only kind of news there is. Because there's an appetite, there's a curiosity, there's a hunger for more information, and that's the opportunity that you all have to fill. So Katie and I use this term regularly. It's called snackable content. And we want to share this with you because, taking a look at the information that you see in the chart, you can see that people are actually scanning. They're looking at headlines. I do it myself. I don't know if you do as well, but that's the kind of content consumption that has become very popular in America. And it's popular by you, popular by your clients and your target audiences. So the idea is actually to step back and to think about putting content together that's shorter and it's more digestible. That's why we call it snackable. So people don't always take the time to read an article. Many publications have gone to where you see an article, and when you're scanning through headlines, and there's a little asterisk next to it, and it'll say 7 minutes or 5 minutes, 3 minutes. The idea is that they're telling you approximately how long it would take you to read that article if you were to click on it. So it is a wonderful opportunity for you to be thinking about how you could tell your stories and share what you're working on, or news that's right for your organizations. People want to cheer you on, but they have to know what it is you're doing in order to do so. Okay, so many firms, when we start working with them, they'll say, I'm a small firm. Like, I don't really have news. What kind of news is it that I could be sharing? And the truth is that you probably have a lot of news, and a lot of really good news. You're a residential architect. That was the biggest category that was on our word cloud. that we created earlier, just think about when you go on site, when materials are being delivered, when ground is being broken, new windows are being put in, a new, the finishing touches, the landscaping is being completed, the interiors, the new fireplace that you're creating inside of the home is being put together with a new type of material you've never used. All of those items speak to your character, your quality, your integrity, your design capabilities, etc. The goal is that you find news that you have, whether it be about you yourself, your firm, maybe one of your staff members. You find that news and you share it out, and you share it often, because people are going to remember that information in the back of their minds, and they're going to say, wow, that firm is a good firm because I've seen all these things they've been working on. I need some help, and I'm going to reach out, and I would like to ask them to come and, give me a hand or give me some suggestions. So that's what we're looking to do, is create that opportunity.
All right. So some of you may be thinking, how do I embrace the shifting media landscape? And that Kelly just shared with us. And what our response would be for you as a first step is to think about developing a news page for your organization to self-curate and share your own news. So I want to start off by explaining what a news page is and how Kelly and I see it as marketers and communicators that work with firms just like yourselves day in and day out to really help you communicate to your key audiences. And it truly is the public face of your organization. We call it the promotional heartbeat. It describes your brand, who you are as an organization, what you're passionate about. And what's beautiful about it is that it allows you to narrate your own story and share what's most important for you, for your organization, with the audience around you. So you have an opportunity to develop that narrative. When it comes to the current media landscape, it is more challenging than it ever was before to get media placed. It doesn't mean you can't do it, but what it does is it leaves that opportunity for owned media and for you to be sharing information about your firm. What's also great about a news page is that it helps individuals find important information about your firm and what you want to be sharing more quickly. Prior to, if you don't have a news page, if someone wanted to look up about your firm, they would have to go to a Google search and look at news and kind of scour the information. This puts all the information you want to share in one place. So let's talk about steps to develop your news page. So we like to break it down into 5 practical steps, going from starting off at square one to strategy all the way to implementation. So step 1 is by far my favorite step, because it really, what you do is you take a step back and you really think about the strategy of your page, whether it's just you sitting down with the notebook, responding to these questions, or bringing in a few of your team members to help you brainstorm what is the purpose and the goals of your news page. What's the type of content you want to be sharing? And what is the best content that you want to be sharing? I want to say right now that not every news story or not every story has to be a news story, that you want to be very selective in the type of content that you want to be sharing with your audience. And Kelly went over a lot of great ideas a few slides back about the types of content that you can share. As a marketer, my favorite question is, who is your audience? Really sitting down and dialing in on who your audience is, what keeps them up at night, what do they care about, is a really important conversation to have in the development of your future news page. How you will share it. We have a whole section on that, and we'll go into detail about best practices to share your content. And then what keywords describe who you are as a firm? And the reason that one is there is because it plays into SEO, or search engine optimization, for a firm. SEO is very complicated. We have many consultants that we work with that are experts within it, but just know that there's many, many factors that play into the accessibility of your website. But one of those is keywords. So for instance, if you are a residential architect, that focuses on renovation and historic preservation, the words that I just started mentioning, those are the types of keywords that you would want to infuse within your news page, because then they have those creepy search engine bots and crawlers that can easily access your page and index it. So when someone goes to organically search for you, it pops up, you pop up higher in the search engine results. Okay, the second thing to think about, and this is a quick slide, but at the end of the day, we want to make developing a news page as least complicated as possible. And how do we do that? We work within the current design framework of your website to make sure that the news page and the look of what we're designing, which is in step 3, easily plays into the current capability so you can get a news page up and running as quickly as possible. All right, step 3. So let's talk about news page design. We all know that there are many, many different forms that a news page can take, and you have to do the form that makes the most sense to you. We're going to share the ones that we see most often in our industry and that tend to work with you in the next few slides. But before we dive into design, I want to take a moment and talk about the accessibility of your news page on your homepage. So going back to our intro slides where we talked about the most 3 visited pages, 1 homepage, 2 contact us, about us, and 3 your news page. So when you're on your homepage or on any page within your website, you want to clearly and obviously identify your news page. And here's just an example of a firm that had it in their header as a primary button to lead to the news page. So we're going to go and talk about 3 different design types and the pros and cons of each, that we believe are the pros and cons of each. So first, I thoughtfully named this all-in-one. So this is just the pro of it. It is just one long scrolling news page that has a catching image, the date, the headline, and the news story all on one page. There is a con to this layout, and that is that you have issues sharing individual news stories. So if you were reaching out to a potential prospect or wanting to re-engage with a potential client that you haven't spoke to in a while and wanted to share a news story, and it was from a couple months ago, in this format, you would have to share the news page link where they would have to scroll and find it. You don't have the capability to share the individual story. So then we have a design that's focused on the high impact of the image. So we know images and how we represent ourselves as architects in the marketplace is so important to us. So this layout has a really high impact image. You see the date, a very, very prevalent headline, and then also a link to read more to go to a separate page to read about that story. This design, there's also a lot of white space, which, as we know from a user standpoint, it allows individuals' eyes to rest as they are engaging with your content. A best practice that I wanted to bring up that Google suggests when it comes to your news page is to always include a call out for contact information. So as someone is scrolling through your news and they're looking to find out more, they have a quick way of accessing who they should be contacting and what their contact information is. Okay, so then we have the grid format. And we usually, this is my favorite, just that I have been working in, personal preference. But how this is laid out, it's usually in a formation of 3 or 4 columns. And obviously the rows populate as you go. But again, very similar format images. It has the headline and the date with the opportunity to click through to the individual stories. And what I love about having the individual story opportunity is that it's easily shareable with your network, but also from a search engine optimization standpoint, those those crawlers that I was talking about before and the SEO bots, they loved focused pages of content that is catered to a specific topic, which you're breaking out those news stories, creates those opportunities and goes ahead and enhances your ability to get picked up from the search engine side of things. Okay, so let's switch gears and let's talk about the fourth step in developing our news page, and that is the content. So not about the compelling content that you're going to be creating, but really just about the structure of your content and how you want it to be presented on your page. So looking from left to right, left is the least content all the way to the right. And again, I just took snapshots of what we were looking at before of different ways that you can position your content. For those that are developing a new news page, before you make the page live, I do recommend taking a look back about 1.5 to 2 years and developing at least 8 to 10 news stories. So when individuals start to access your page, they see a robust amount of content and news stories that you're sharing. Okay, the final and very important step of this whole news page development process is step number 5, and that is updating. Making sure that your firm news is up to date is super, super important to look relevant and visible with your audience. Make it a habit. I know that we all get very bogged down with project work, and it seems to fall to the wayside for some. But what I recommend doing is taking the approach of time blocking, where maybe on a monthly basis, or I suggest for the size of the firms we're talking about, a quarterly basis, sitting down, talking about the recent news stories that have occurred, and scheduling time within your day or within your week to develop those news stories is really helpful. It's also really good to keep an eye on your competitors' news pages to see what they're talking about, or even ones that other architectural firms that might be, bigger or smaller in size to you, that aren't direct competitors, but just to see what's happening there to give you some inspiration is always a great habit to instill. And then also, looking at Mentimeter, there are, for many of you, are larger than one person. So if you have a staff, encourage them to get involved to help you figure out what content you want to share and develop that content to be sharing out. Okay, CE word number 2 is strategy. Okay, so your news page is in motion, but let's talk about how to craft compelling content. Kelly, I'll pass it to you.
Thank you so much. Okay, so crafting compelling content doesn't need to be complicated, and it shouldn't be. Remember what we said again about snackable content. If you walk away with anything today, please keep that phrase in mind. It's so important to realize that shorter is better. I've worked with so many architects during my career, and there are millions of stories that are wrapped up inside of every project that you work on. And I totally understand that. But imagine, as Katie said, you break it out into some snackable content, you would have enough content for the entire year on just 1 or 2 projects, sharing out some pertinent points for each. So we're going to dive into how do you do this? So best practices is where we begin. First up is the best practices for a headline. And the idea for a headline is that you want it to have some action associated with it, maybe no more than 6 to 10 words. That's as long as a headline should ever be. And you want to highlight the benefit and the value of whatever it is that you're doing. I like the little example that we used over here on the side, and it's really quick. There's using the colon in there so that you've got the opportunity to kind of break out the idea or the thought. But the cool part is that when you think of this firm, after seeing the image and seeing the headline, you start to get a picture in your mind of what that firm's capabilities are. So we keep rolling. Next one is about the actual content itself. So when we talk about creating the content, it is all about being concise. Katie and I both really like one sentence, maybe two, as a good example to kind of whet their appetite. But the longest we ever encourage people to make a news story is 150 words. And the reason for that is once again, you just don't have the readership that you once did. You need to capture them with some compelling content quickly. Make it relevant, make sure it's clear and engaging. And what do I mean by engaging? I mean things like, hey, click here to learn more, or here's an article that was written about this project, or here's the client's webpage, take a look. Like sending people to learn more information if they've made it through your article or your write-up, you want to give them more, let them know that there's more to grab a hold of. And as Katie indicated, SEO, keywords, if you're a preservation architect, make sure preservation, adaptive reuse, restoration, make sure you're using those words in your headlines and in your content. What that's going to do is just make it so that you're more searchable, and it also helps to brand you as a firm for whatever it is that you want to be best known for. So let's jump in. We're going to give you a couple really quick examples. The first one is we had one of these conversations yesterday with one of our existing clients. You probably do it too, is that whenever you bring a new employee on board, that's always something to share. So you've got a new employee. In this case, it was a new senior project architect, or news story number 2 example is you won an award, an AIA award for a small museum renovation that you worked on. So start by thinking about reimagining your content. We have a new employee and John Brown is your project manager. Think about taking the name of your firm. In this case, we named it ALA Architects. And you've named John Brown as a new senior project architect. What does that say? It gets the name of your firm in there. You're doing well enough that you're hiring. You've got somebody that's a senior project architect. It must mean that you have larger projects or bigger opportunities that you're working on. All of those things start to create an image in people's minds about ALA architects. If you go one step further, you're going to add in some content, once again, pretty short. In this case, you're going to identify that, the type of work that he does, maybe where he went to college, if that's relevant, or if he studies or teaches someplace, the type of work he does, you want it to match up with the type of work that your firm does, so that you're, once again, pushing out what is it that ALA Architects is really good at, and that Brown is really excited to come and join your firm and be part of those enduring residential spaces. Tie in who you are with your new hire. Same exact thing. If you move to, we won the award for the renovated museum. The Bird Museum is a well-known small museum, and the renovations were done by your firm, ALA, and they drew accolades. If you go a step further, you have that it drew accolades, and you tell a little bit more about it. It was, in this case, the Philadelphia chapter of AIA that you won an honor award for. It tells you the cost of what the overall size of the project was. That kind of gives an idea of the capability or the size of the type of work you like to do. And then you go in even further to say, hey, we've given the museum more exhibit space. We've expanded outdoor seating. They got a little room for a small cafe, and they have a space to rent out now because we've rethought the way the space in the existing facility works. There's many, 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 many firms out, or many museums out there that want to do that type of work. And they're able to see very quickly that you've already done that type of work. You're very capable. You're in their size budget, that you've won an award. So obviously, if you've received accolades, then you're really good at it on top of it. So those are a couple of ways that you can use news to tell your story. And then finally, really important is that we always encourage with every news story, whatever layout you choose, is that there's an image that's associated with it. Something with an image is 75% more likely for somebody to pay attention and look at the content that goes with it. And that's exactly what you're trying to do, whether it's with John Brown or with the Bird Museum. In both cases, they're really, really good images that kind of showcase the type of work that you do and give a greater insight into your firm. Once again, getting someone who you've recently hired or an award that's been won from an AIA chapter or anyone else for that matter, to try to get coverage for those from our current media state is very, very, very challenging. That would probably, many of these pieces would fall into the pay to play, where you'd have to pay to have someone's new hire announcement made. but you can very easily do that yourself through your news. Now imagine you have this news story, and Katie's going to talk in a few minutes about how you can take these news stories that you've created and share them out. The third CE word, as we just talked about, so important, think snackable content, is your headline. The headline is really super important for anyone to digest and remember. And if they see a number of headlines about your firm, they're good news, they're sharing stories, updates, current events that you may be involved in, speaking at a conference, whatever it may be, when they see those headlines, they really do get stored in the back of people's minds. And then when those opportunities come up, they get the call.
All right. So like Kelly mentioned, we have our news page in development. It is nearly completed. We have 8 to 10 news stories on the docket that are ready to be published. That's great, but the most important step is to share it out. And making sure that when you share it out, you're sharing it out to your key target audience, the people that really want to hear from you. So at the end of the day, it comes back to curiosity. Who wants to know about ALA architects? Well, if they do, if they work with museums and cultural institutions, well, think about the executive directors of those institutions or the community leaders. They want to know what's happening with your firm as they start to figure out their path forward for their organizations. So who wants to hear about you guys? Think about your past or current or potential clients. Potential new hires is a big thing. By increasing your self-curated news and getting the word out there about your firm, you will naturally have more interest and intrigue of people coming to work at your firm. Being visible with industry peers and your teaming partners on your projects is super important, and also including them in your promotion. The local government and community, for those that work in a lot of municipality projects, that's a big one. Leveraging and sharing with your professional organizations that you're a part of is also they want to hear about you and what's happening. And then, of course, the media. I know we said that it's a challenge, but it doesn't mean that you cannot still in today's day get earned media with trade and local and regional publications. So there's lots of ways to share your news. We are going to talk about today for the last 10 or 15 minutes or so, the most practical that we see with small firms, and then also the most successful. So let's jump right in. I know we mentioned it a few times already, but developing your own e-newsletter for your organization to share your news is a great way to get the message out there. You can share directly with your contact list. And I know some of you are thinking like, ooh, my contact list, like it needs some help. There's probably only about 50 contacts on it right now. That's okay. That's a great starting point in sharing your message. And as you continue to share more e-newsletters, where Kelly and I suggest at least twice a year, but quarterly, if that's possible for your organization, you will start to develop more contacts for that list now that you're utilizing it. We tend to lean on the email delivery services such as Constant Contact or MailChimp. Selfishly, from a business development perspective, it has great analytic tools to see who's engaging with your content, so you can turn a cold lead into a warm lead. And then when developing your e-newsletter content, go back to snackable content. People lose interest in things quickly. No more than 4 very short and sweet news stories, and make sure it's diverse in content to share who you are as a firm. Meaning, don't just focus on projects, don't just focus on people, focus on those 2 plus, thought leadership content or maybe a blog post you developed. Another way to share out your news stories is just through a personal email and sending someone a link to your news page or to a story that you think that they might be interested in. Again, this is another good business development tool where it might be someone that you're looking to re-engage with. You know that there's a project coming down the pike for this local higher ed liberal arts private school in the area, but you don't know what to share with them to re-engage with them. Share a news story link that you think they might be interested in. It does work. We do it with our clients, and they have received great results from it. So taking it a step further, your email signature, think about how many emails we send out a day. If I said 50, I don't think that that's off at all. It could be 50 plus, but taking your email signature and incorporating an impactful, digestible sentence about, for instance, with ALA Architects, keep up to date with ALA Architects by visiting our news page. So every time you send out an email, you are promoting your news page in some shape or form, which is fantastic. Social media, today's day and age. I know I love social media. It's actually where I get a lot of my news from. Kelly might feel differently about that, but we do know that each social media platform drives a specific target audience. So for instance, sharing out your news stories through the social media feeds that make sense to you. If you are a residential architect, utilizing Facebook and Instagram to share your stories is a great avenue for you to connect with potential home buyers. If you are a designer for higher ed, maybe you should really be focusing on the LinkedIn market and going more of that B2B opportunity, but making sure you're utilizing the free tool of sharing your information and getting a larger reach out of your news is very, very crucial. So I'm going to take it a step further and say the @ symbol is totally your friend in the social space. For those that don't know what that means, is by utilizing @ you are able to tag your clients, your project team partners within a social media post. They'll get a notification and have the ability to reshare the content. When our clients do that, 9 out of 10 times, those individuals or those organizations do reshare the story, which is fantastic. So off to the right, you'll see a really complicated graphic, but really all it is, it's a social networking map. So each of those individual nodes represents a person or an organization, and each of the lines show relationships and connections. So if you can imagine you sharing one post, and then just even having one person reshare it, the power of social media will get your message out there way further than just your immediate network in that social space.
Okay, so when you think about sharing, as Katie mentioned earlier, sharing with media and organizations that you belong to, maybe with community leaders, putting that newsletter together and adding those individuals to your email list to share out a recent project completion or news that you have, an award that you've won. You never know what's going to happen with that. The media does open them, they do take a look, they become aware, and that can often lead to other opportunities that you weren't imagining. The organization is putting together a panel and they remember that they saw that you did something recently on sustainability, and they would like to have you on as a panelist and an expert for their sustainability discussion. It leads to many, many, many opportunities. We had an architect recently that sent something out and shared a recent completion of a small K through 12 project. And as a result, another K through 12 organization, another school, saw the work that was done and asked them to come and take a look because they were thinking about doing a similar project. And that's the way this works, is that the news media isn't pushing out your news. So it's up to you to be able to figure out a way to get that news out in front of those that are really going to matter. In addition, one of the greatest ways to share the news is with your staff, your colleagues, maybe some mentors, friends, getting people to share that info out. Katie just showed that map for you. And what's so exciting about it is that when you have your staff, for example, you have a couple people on your staff, you share a story about a recent project completion and you share it on the firm's social media feed, or you put a news story together. and let the staff know. They'll share it with their contacts as well. And that list just keeps getting longer and longer of those that are aware of all that you're working on. If you're a sole practitioner, do not feel overwhelmed by this. That literally means that you're just going to continue to build, even if it's just a few more times each time you send a note out. There's also word of mouth that happens, etc. We all know how that works in our industry. It's just that we're sharing news a little differently than it was done several years ago. And this is your chance to lean in and really make that happen. Okay, Katie, take us home.
All right, so our final section for today, and thank you for coming on the journey with us of self-curated news for your organization to help raise visibility, but is a very near and dear topic to my heart, and that is analyzing and measuring the impact of your news page, of your self-curated news content, and how you go about sharing it. So at the end of the day, we all have a lot on our plate, especially if you are not a marketer or a communications individual within your firm. So making sure any of the work that you're doing outside of your project work is a return on investment for your firm is what's most important to us. So what we recommend is looking at 3 types of analytics, and we're going to go over them high level today. 1 is email analytics, 2, web analytics, and 3, social media analytics. So starting off with email analytics, this may look familiar to some of you that work in MailChimp, but this is an email analytic dashboard from an email or campaign that was sent to promote one of our clients' e-newsletter content. It gives you the high level information you need to see how the engagement rates went. We all know what an open rate is, but just to specify, when you talk about a click-through rate, that means that not only did an individual open up your email, but they engaged with your content. So one of your news stories. So within the architecture space, there is a benchmark of statistics that you want to be striving for when you share your e-newsletter content. And that is a little over 31% of an average open rate, and then an average click-through rate right below 3% or 2.94. What's really cool about email statistics is that you can actually dive even deeper into this to see who exactly opened your email and who exactly engaged with your content and what content they engaged with. So again, from a business development standpoint, you say, hey, John Smith from so-and-so university, engaged with one of our news stories about X. Like, it gives you an opportunity to turn a cold lead into a warm lead and conduct some outreach, knowing that they know that your firm is top of mind because they just received an e-newsletter to help continue or open up a conversation. Okay, and then website analytics. Google Analytics, anyone? A lot of information. You can spend hours upon hours for your firm just looking at your website analytics, but I don't recommend spending that much time, but I do recommend looking at it high level and starting to track, once your news page is developed and once you start sharing that content, how your web page is being engaged with. So for instance, when you look at this screenshot, the sessions over time, that bar chart in the middle, this is an example of one of our clients' website analytics. And it's fun to see that big spike that you see to the right-hand side near December 8th. That is actually when we sent out an e-newsletter piece for them. So you see the spike of engagement from that e-newsletter piece that brought them to the website, which was the goal of the piece. All right, social analytics. So digital is super creepy with the data that you can come up with. That's why I love web, social, and email analytics, because as marketers, it helps us really focus our energy and efforts and make sure we're sharing content that your audience cares about. So when you're looking at your social analytic dashboards, there's always an opportunity within each of them They're a bit different, each of the platforms, but you can look at your audience size from when you started your news page content or when you started sharing, and then start to track your audience size grow over time would be the goal. You can look at the reach from a geographic standpoint and how far you're starting to move the needle and move outside of what your current demographic looked like in your social landscape. Audience behavior is always really fun from the point of when they engage with your content and the type of content they engage with. So think about it. If you find that when you post on Tuesdays or Wednesdays around lunchtime, that is the content that gets engaged with most, maybe you should consider posting on social media on Tuesday and Wednesdays during lunchtime. Or if there's a certain content type, whether it be a project feature or a people promotions that is getting engaged with, and you see that it gets highly engaged with, you can continue to drive your narrative and your content towards that interest. And then of course, at the end of the day, we want to drive people back to your website. So you also have the opportunity to see from your social feeds how your content is being driven back to your website. So those are quantitative results. You can't forget about the qualitative because it's a little bit harder to track. But if you have a simple Word document, I love Excel, Kelly doesn't, Excel document to be tracking your efforts of sharing out your news stories and just making notes when something successful has happened or a good connection that has happened because of one of your news story sharing. It's great to see the results because it'll make you want to keep developing your own self-curated news. So for example, you share out an e-newsletter and you get a note back from 3 of your past clients, and one of them is saying, and you're a residential architect, and one of them is like, hey, it's so great to, see your content. We actually have another potential home that we'd be interested in having you design. That's happened before with one of our clients. But again, that is a great ROI that you want to be tracking to show the most of your media efforts. All right. Last CE word of the day. CE word number 4, analytics. All right, Kelly, you're truly going to take us home.
Our most favorite part of all of this is to answer your questions, which we're going to get to in just a moment. I just want to start off with these final thoughts that we know that working with many, many architecture firms, the first thing we hear when we start to describe the story of creating your own news is people say, I don't want to brag. I don't want to tell, I feel uncomfortable sharing the news about what's going on within my firm. I'd rather that somebody else, would put that all together for me. But the truth is that isn't going to happen most likely unless there's a very high profile project in your horizon that you're going to get the kind of coverage that you really deserve. So it's really up to you to start realizing that the time is now to lean into this idea of creating a bit of your own news. It doesn't have to be a ton, but what you put out there, and this is such a beautiful thing, what you put out there is what people are going to know about your firm and about you as an individual. So you have that ability to be able to craft what that looks like and what it sounds like. You get the ability to choose the images that they see and the text they're going to read about you and your firm. It's actually a really exciting time. It probably feels a little scary because remember, this has all changed pretty rapidly for most people. And we just have to embrace that change and realize that that's how our clients and our contacts are now receiving their information, is looking at it digitally. Showcase your best work. Make sure you put your expertise out there front and center. We wanted to pull back this curtain and share this with you because we just think for our industry, in order for us to receive the kind of accolades for all the work that you do and the great things that you work on day in and day out, your audience is curious. They want to know. They want to see you succeed. And most importantly, they want to work with really smart and successful people. So we have to show them that. And the most important piece for you to walk away with is that this works. We have a small firm in DC that we're currently working with, and they shared a newsletter. They immediately received 3 messages from past clients it was kind of like reminding them that they had worked together. And one said, gosh, I just bought this new building and I hadn't thought about it, but why don't you come on down and you could help us? We want to completely restore the whole thing. And it ended up being a fantastic new project for the architect. They also received some emails from individuals that they added to their list that they want to know, that now know a little bit about them, and reached out and said, hey, that's great work, let's have coffee. And then a small firm in California that we're working with right now, her goal was to start working on higher end residential work. So we put an email or a newsletter together for her that went out to real estate firms. It resulted in 2 real estate agents reaching out with several clients that were looking for a quality architect. One has a brand new, exciting new residential design, biggest project she's worked on in her career. She's over the moon. That came from her sharing news about a project she's currently working on. Sharing your good news is crucial to you in increasing the volume on your firm and on your expertise. And that's that heartbeat that you want to create for your organization. Let people know what you're up to. And most importantly, share it out. Katie and I would love to see it. Put us on your mailing list. Katie will share our email addresses up. Let us know. Send us a test. Send us an email, and we'll be glad to send you back some ideas or thoughts, or give you some additional names of people to add to your email list. Or if you get your webpage up and running, let us know. Feel free to reach out anytime. We want to see your good work celebrated, and we're happy to offer suggestions. No charge. This is AIA, our AIA peeps. We really want to help you and see you succeed. Just reach out anytime, and we're happy to do what we can. So I think we've left about 15 minutes for Q&A. So
Yeah.
we'd love to get started. There's nothing off the table. Throw it. We're ready to go.
All right, Kelly, I'm gonna jump into the chat,
Great. Thank you.
scroll to the top and see where we left with questions.
I hope there's a couple. Please feel free to add more.
Yes. There are. Okay, so first is from Elise. What's the difference between a news page and a blog?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Bigger firms tend to separate those out. A news page and a blog can be the same. It can be in the same setting or the same format that you set up. But when it's a blog, it's your written work. You want to clearly state that in your headline. So it would be like blog with the headline name, and make sure that it clearly says that that's exactly what it is. A news story is just reporting out on something that's happening.
Yeah. And what we recommend, again, I know Kelly said for the larger firms, they have separate pages. Many firms call it insights. But there's other words that's used that it's more thought leadership based and based on expertise and leveraging your individual thought leaders. And then having your news stories. But for small firms, we recommend just having, you could call it a news and blog page, but just having one page clearly defining if you have a blog post within
And I
that
don't
one.
know this, Katie, but I know that you probably have all encountered it. The worst thing is that you start it and then you don't keep up with it. So if you have a blog, and you have your date on it, you just want to make sure that things are being posted fairly regularly. We went onto an architect's webpage recently, and they hadn't posted anything since 2018. You begin to wonder, did they make it through the pandemic? Are they still around? Like, what's going on? So that's a really important piece to add in there, is that you want to make sure that you keep up with it. But we suggest putting blogs and news together in one setting.
And if you're worried about dates and having relevant information, we've had clients feel that way. And as an interim, until they get the self-curated news engine up and running, they actually just left the dates unpublished in the news stories until they get a better cadence and rhythm. Okay. Kimberly, would you recommend this type of news posted to a blog section of a website, or is it better to have a blog be educational and separate from the snackable news?
If you have that capability to separate the two out, once again, we just find that this can all be very overwhelming to a smaller firm. So as we suggested before, putting them together, at least in the beginning, is a good idea. You could always separate them out once you get enough blog content together to make it its own thing. For larger firms, we do suggest they separate them, but they have more writers that are writing more consistently, and like an editorial calendar of content to publish throughout the year.
Agreed. All right. Brad asks, do people actually read e-newsletters that they have not specifically signed up for? The answer is yes. So when it comes to e-newsletter content, especially with smaller firms, you don't have a way to opt into it on your website for the most time. So it's usually the owners or the principals of the firm that kind of use their initial personal, professional contact list to develop the e-newsletter content. So it doesn't come out of left field and they know the name of the firm. And then as you start doing active business development or going to a conference and meeting someone, you start adding those in. If they don't want to receive your content, they'll just unsubscribe and you don't send to them any further. But but e-newsletters are opened for those who don't specifically subscribe to your e-newsletter content.
A lot of people have their email set up so that the content will still show, but it wouldn't show that you necessarily, that you necessarily read it, but you would still read some of those headlines and get some snackable content for that firm, even though they may not have clicked on the full email itself. And the answer is yeah. We, as we said, about 30+% when we send out an email, that's usually the open rate.
Kelly, I have a question that I think you would be best to answer.
Sure.
Any tips for Department of Defense and Department of Interior federal government projects?
Yeah, that's
ideas how to market to these departments of the government for marketing to them?
Yeah, that's a great question. And if you want to write down my email, send a note. I'd love to have a whole conversation. It's one of my favorites. We have worked very, very closely with the Department of Defense and GSA and Department of Interiors over the years, and there are many ways to get to them. Email doesn't get through to them because spam blockers. So there's got to be a lot of other tips and tricks that you take, including they all have really strong intranet sites, and working with them to get your project published on the intranet site and you writing the content, that's been one way that we've been able to get in-house with the organizations. And it's, to have your work seen by the very audience that you want to see it. That's just one way, but there's many others. Feel free to give a call and we'll give you some more tips.
And can you share this presentation or make available online? Of course, Cassidy will do what we usually do and get you a PDF of the presentation to share with our attendees today. All right, Sarah, my team and me feel overwhelmed by how much we have to post to actually grab attention / utilize the algorithms and social media, which turns into paralysis. Totally.
Yep.
Recommendation on how often to post or add news that is doable for a busy small firm.
Yeah, that's a great question. We run into that with every single firm. I don't want you to think you're alone. That is absolutely true. We strongly suggest, that's why we suggest putting the news page together, because then you can pull from your news content to be able to use that as part of your social media feed. Updating your news page doesn't feel quite so daunting. And if you can just link to a news story that's already there, that can be very helpful. As far as amount of posts that we suggest for people to post, depending on the size of your firm or the market that you're in, we really don't suggest posting more than once a week. Is an aggressive stance. And for many firms, we say 2 to 3 times a month is usually a good place to go. All those algorithms can scare you or can push you in the wrong direction. But remember, it's about not the quantity of the audience, it's the quality. It's the right people and finding out and figuring out where they are. Sending the information, if you have, it could be an audience of 50 that you're trying to target, sending an email through 2 or 3 times a year to that target audience could be very, very helpful.
All right. Whitney, what happens with aging news on the news page?
Yeah, it's a great question. When you set your page up, you can make that determination. We typically tell people to just leave it and let it roll. that somebody can go back and search as long as they want to. It shows your hierarchy and how long you've been in business. There's nothing wrong with having it there. If it's a scrolling feed, it certainly is, it could be very powerful, but it's up to you. You can do a sunset date on how long your content is up based on how your news page is programmed.
Agreed. All right, Melissa, any tips for using staff rather than a professional photography for images?
Awesome question. Awesome. So we strongly recommend that you try to get your staff as engaged in this entire process as possible. This isn't just a one-person job. This isn't something that, you take on as the owner and it just gets added to that laundry list of responsibilities you have in running your own firm. But teaching them and setting up some parameters around your photography of what it is you're looking to showcase is really important. We have so many architects, especially staff architects, that come back and they get really excited about a small detail in a project, or maybe not getting exactly the right light on a project, or they take a lot of images and they want to piece them together and turn it into a video of the same space over and over again from different directions. The idea is to really create kind of a parameter of what is it that you want to be seen from your firm, and then having the staff all participate in that. It can be a really fun exercise, but without parameters, everybody has a different idea of what a good image is. And it's taken us a long time to figure that out. But if you can set those parameters and make them very clear, you'll start getting the kind of content you want to be wrapped around your company.
All right. I think, unless we have any more questions, we made it through all of the questions.
Awesome.
Kelly and I want to thank you all again for bearing with us in the beginning, and then also staying with us along this presentation to learn about self-curated news. And truly, if you have any questions, just want to pick our brains about something, we'd love to hear from you. Our contact information is there and we are always accessible.